April 25, 1986, Pripyat, Soviet Union. It was early Saturday morning when Nikolai Shevchenko, a railroad maintenance manager from Pripyat, a city near Chernobyl, was on extended duty. His job was to inspect the rails that lead to Chernobyl just next to the nuclear power station. The rails were old and required continuous maintenance. Nikolai was inspecting electrical lines and occasionally replacing old rusty bolts which caused gaps to form between rails which could derail a train if the gap was wide enough. In rare occasions, a part of a rail needed to be replaced. The following is the report Mr. Shevchenko submitted to his superior. I started my duty round at 7:15. I was called to make an inspection of the section No. 7, the last 5 kilometers of the rails to Chernobyl. There was a train arriving at 18:00, so I had to make sure that everything is okay and give a green light for the track. At about 9:22 I have finished the inspectional, and all was fine regarding the tracks and the electrical lines used by electric locomotives. On 2 places bolts would need to be replaced in the near future, but nothing urgent, and the rails were safe. As I was returning to Pripyat, at about 2 miles from the Chernobyl station near an old abandoned station house, I saw 2 dark spheres. One was large and one much smaller. In my backpack I had a Zenith 35mm camera. I regularly used it to document damage encountered on the rails. I knew I still had a few frames remaining in the film roll. I took 2 shots, but I felt they would come out blurry because not only were my hands shaking, but I even noticed that my head was shaking too. This time I kneeled on the tracks and tucked my elbows to my side to get a firmer grip and steady my hands. After I took the shot, I stood up and noticed that the smaller sphere started moving a few meters to the right and then a few meters to the left, away from the larger sphere. The larger sphere did not move. I stood motionless looking at it. I moved closer to the objects and I could see that they were deep gray, almost black in color, and the surface seemed perfectly polished. They looked like they were made of some metal. The encounter lasted maybe 2 or 3 minutes in total. I tried to take an additional photograph only to realize that I had no film left in the camera. Suddenly, in a blink of an eye, the spheres disappeared. I looked around in the sky, but there was nothing. Mr. Shevchenko submitted the report on the unusual sighting at 10:20 the same morning. He left his handwritten report in the office of the main supervisor, who was out of office, being it a Saturday. He did not leave the film roll in the office as he wanted to take it for development himself. Excited about the unusual encounter, he couldn't sleep. That night at around 1:30 in the morning on the 26th, he heard 2 explosions coming from the direction of Chernobyl. At around 8 in the morning, alarms could be heard around Pripyat, and everybody was instructed to leave the city as soon as possible, as there was an explosion in the nuclear power plant. Mr. Shevchenko left for Moscow with the first wave of the evacuation buses. Later in Moscow, he developed the film roll and kept the entire incident to himself. His report was never seen. It might still be on his supervisor's wooden desk, as the city of Pripyat was entirely evacuated and is still a ghost town to this day. He often wondered if the spheres had anything to do with the tragic disaster at the nuclear plant. Did the spheres represent some sort of a warning that predicted a tragic event, or was it all simply a coincidence? Nikolai Shevchenko died in Moscow in 2016, leaving behind a volume of writings on the subject of his encounter. They were never published. The photograph and extracts from his diary were provided by his family members.